What you're about to hear is not a rant. It's not bitterness. It's history, the harshest experiment in female loyalty ever recorded. In the Soviet Gulag, millions of men were stripped of status, strength, and security, and their wives, lovers, and families were forced to choose: remain loyal or survive. From this nightmare, 6 laws about female loyalty were revealed. Understand them, and you'll see relationships with clear eyes, not illusions. Philosophers argued about love from comfort, but the Gulag was the true test of loyalty. Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn documented what women did under that pressure: the letters that stopped, the divorce papers that arrived, and the rare acts of devotion that defied the odds. This isn't misogyny. This is history, and from it comes the Solzhenitsyn Secret. Law 1: female loyalty is conditional. Most female loyalty depends on a man's ability to provide strength, security, and status. History doesn't whisper this truth. It screams it, and nowhere louder than in the Gulag. Take Yevgeny, a young engineer with brilliance in his mind and fire in his future. One night, that future was stolen. A knock at the door, an arrest without trial, and suddenly he was branded a traitor. 10 years in a Siberian camp. His world shrank to rations of bread, axes biting into frozen wood, and the gnawing cold of -40 degrees. But through it all, he had one anchor: his wife, Anna. Her memory was his oxygen. He wrote her letters on scraps of paper, pouring out love, promises, and reassurances. "I am strong. I am innocent. I will come back to you." For a year, he starved but held on, not for himself, but for her. And then the letter came, not from her, but from the court. Divorce papers. Anna had remarried, attached, a short note: "Forgive me. This is too difficult. I must think of my life now." The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was physical. It crushed the last spark inside him. That night, Yevgeny gave away his bread ration. He stopped fighting. He stopped breathing for tomorrow. Weeks later, pneumonia carried him into the mass grave of the forgotten. This is not a story about one woman. It's about a pattern Solzhenitsyn documented thousands of times. Wives who once swore eternal love dissolved those vows the moment their husband lost his ability to protect, to provide, to hold status in the world. Why? Because female loyalty is not abstract. It is rooted in survival. A woman's biology compels her to protect herself and her children from ruin. When a man becomes a convict, an exile, a social outcast, she doesn't just lose him. She risks her own survival by staying attached. So the hard truth is this: most female loyalty is not to the man himself. It is to the resources, protection, and status he represents. When those vanish, the loyalty often does too. This doesn't make her evil. It makes her human. But for the man, it feels like death. Law 2: the rare exception. Not every story ended in abandonment. In the vast snowfield of betrayal, there were rare sparks of fire. Women who chose ruin over comfort, hardship over survival. History calls them the Decembrist wives. After the failed uprising of 1825, noblemen were exiled to Siberia. Their wives had a choice: stay in the warm salons of St. Petersburg or follow their husbands into the abyss. Against all logic, some chose the abyss. The same thing happened in the Gulag. While thousands of wives filed divorce papers, a handful of women packed their lives into a suitcase and moved to remote prison towns. They stood in endless lines just to deliver a potato, a scrap of sausage, a lump of sugar, small gifts that meant the difference between life and death for their men. They became warriors of bureaucracy, petitioning officials, writing appeals, refusing to be silenced. Their loyalty wasn't passive. It was an act of daily resistance. To love a convict in Stalin's Russia was to brand yourself a traitor. And still, they stayed. But here's the brutal truth. They were the exception, not the rule. 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000. Rare miracles of devotion forged from unusual strength, independence, or ideology that made them immune to social pressure. Even Solzhenitsyn's own first wife, Natalia, lived the paradox. At first, she stayed loyal, sending letters, sending what food she could. But years of pressure cracked her resolve. She divorced him. Then when he returned from exile, she sought him out again. They remarried only to part once more later in life. Her loyalty faltered, but it was never completely extinguished. These stories remind us, unconditional loyalty exists, but it cannot be demanded and it cannot be assumed. It is not the baseline, it is the anomaly. And if you ever encounter such loyalty, don't mistake it for something common. Treat it as rare gold, to be recognized, honored, and never taken for granted. Law 3, the modern echo. The Gulag may be gone, but the laws it revealed didn't disappear. They didn't stay buried in Siberian snow. They live on, softer, quieter, disguised in the language of modern life. Today, most men aren't dragged off in the middle of the night by the secret police, but they still face their own exiles. A job loss, a business collapse, a long illness, a stretch of depression that steals their fire. In those moments, the test of female loyalty still comes. The stories no longer arrive as divorce papers stamped by Soviet courts. They arrive as text messages, whispered conversations, carefully worded breakups. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I need to think about my future. You're not the man you used to be. Different words, same script. The truth is, loyalty today is measured by the same calculus as in the camps. Strength, provision, security. When those weaken, most relationships erode. Not overnight in a blizzard of betrayal, but slowly, in 1,000 small withdrawals of affection. The tone changes. The respect fades. The intimacy grows cold. This is the modern echo of the Gulag. A man who loses his job often loses his marriage soon after. A man who lets depression consume him watches his partner drift. A man who fails to lead, to hold frame, finds himself replaced by someone who can. And just like the men in the camps, he wonders, did she ever really love me? But the answer is the same as it was in Siberia. She loved the version of you that provided strength and direction. When that vanished, so did the loyalty. This doesn't mean modern women are cruel. It means the same evolutionary imperatives are at work today as they were 70 years ago. The stage has changed. The costumes have changed. But the play remains the same. Law 4. The Forge. When the divorce papers arrived in the camps, some men broke instantly. They gave away their bread. They laid down in the snow. They surrendered to despair. But others, a rare breed, refused to die inside. For them, betrayal wasn't poison. It was fire. And instead of being consumed, they used that fire to forge themselves into something harder than steel. Take Dmitri, a historian imprisoned for ideological deviation. He received the same letter so many others did. His fiancée had married an NKVD officer, the very organization that locked him away. For 2 days he was a shell of a man, catatonic, staring into nothing. On the 3rd day he made a choice, not to forget, not to forgive, but to reframe. She has not betrayed me, he told himself. She has revealed herself. The state, by imprisoning him, had not stolen his future. It had spared him from building a life with a woman whose loyalty was only skin deep. That moment of reframing was his resurrection. He stopped bleeding from the wound of betrayal. Instead, he studied it. Every act of cruelty became a lesson. Every broken man became a teacher. His suffering transformed into data. His pain became education. This is the essence of the Forge. Betrayal is inevitable, but it doesn't have to be fatal. It can be alchemy, turning despair into clarity, weakness into willpower, heartbreak into armor. In the Gulag, this shift meant the difference between life and death. For the modern man, it means the difference between being destroyed by disloyalty or being reborn stronger than before. You cannot control female loyalty, but you can control how you respond when it breaks. And in that response, you are either shattered or forged. Law 5, mission over relationship. In the Gulag, men who lived for their wives often died when those wives left. Their entire will to survive was tied to female loyalty. When it snapped, so did they. But the men who endured found something different, a purpose beyond any woman, a mission no betrayal could touch. Solzhenitsyn himself is the greatest example. Locked in a frozen hell, stripped of freedom, betrayed by friends, watched even his first wife's loyalty collapse under pressure, he still clung to a mission. In the silence of the barracks, he began composing what would become the Gulag archipelago, line by line, word by word, entire chapters built inside his mind. He used pebbles, matchsticks, and memory tricks to preserve thousands of lines of text, because his mission was greater than his pain. Other prisoners adopted missions of their own. Some became living archives, memorizing names and stories to one day bear witness. Some clung to small daily rituals, teaching languages, reciting poetry, solving equations, not for survival alone, but as acts of defiance, preserving human dignity against the machine of dehumanization. Here is the law. A relationship cannot be the center of your universe. If your foundation is built on female loyalty, you are one letter away from collapse. Your mission must be higher, larger, untouchable, something so fundamentally yours that no betrayal can reach it. When you have such a mission, female loyalty becomes a gift, not a necessity. She can walk with you, but she cannot be the path itself. She can contribute to your building, but she cannot be the foundation of the cathedral. The man whose mission is his anchor cannot be destroyed by loyalty gained or loyalty lost. He can welcome it, appreciate it, but he does not depend on it. Law 6. Paradoxical freedom. The last law is the most difficult and the most liberating. It is the paradox every man in the Gulag eventually faced. When you accept the limits of female loyalty, you become free. For years, men poured their hope into letters. They prayed for a reply, for a sign of love. When those replies never came, they broke. Hope became poison. But the survivors learned a darker wisdom: to kill that fragile hope and replace it with something stronger. They stopped waiting for loyalty. They stopped begging for love to return. They stopped demanding what reality had already taken away. Instead, they shifted their focus inward. They built an internal fortress that no betrayal could collapse. They shrank their world from 10 years of exile to 10 minutes of endurance, from impossible futures to the single swing of an axe, the next breath, the next step. And here lies the paradox. By giving up the need for loyalty, they became men capable of genuine connection again. When love arrived, they could cherish it without fear. When loyalty appeared, they could honor it without clinging. And when betrayal came, as it so often does, they no longer crumbled. They had discovered a higher kind of strength: love without neediness, loyalty without illusions, freedom without bitterness. This is the paradoxical freedom of the Solzhenitsyn Secret. When you accept that loyalty is conditional, you unlock the ability to live without fear of its loss. This is the Solzhenitsyn Secret. 6 laws of female loyalty carved out of hunger, betrayal, and frozen earth. They are not meant to make you bitter. They are meant to make you clear-eyed, to free you from the illusions that destroy men when reality doesn't match their fairy tales. Yes, most loyalty is conditional. Yes, exceptions exist, but they are rare. Yes, the same patterns echo today in softer prisons of jobs lost, health broken, or frame collapsed. But you are not powerless. You can be forged by betrayal. You can build a mission greater than any single relationship. And you can unlock the paradoxical freedom that comes when you accept loyalty's limits. The men who survived the camps walked out unrecognizable, scarred, hardened, and yet strangely at peace. They no longer feared betrayal because they had lived through its worst form. They no longer begged for loyalty because they had learned to stand alone. And that is your task: to see love for what it is: conditional, fragile, beautiful in its moments, but never the foundation of your existence. Your foundation is your mission, your strength, your will. Cherish loyalty when it is given. Do not crumble when it fades. And above all, never mistake conditional love for eternal truth.